Welcome to my presentation, The Role of Oxidative Stress in Sleep Disorders. My name is Terence Shenfield and I am the co-owner of A&T Respiratory Lectures. This is going to be a very interesting topic because a lot of disease processes are being found to be caused by oxidative stress, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, COPD, asthma. There's a bunch of different things. So the point is, so you can imagine that sleep is going to be impacted by it too. And not to get ahead of myself, but we all have heard of free radicals and we all heard of ATP production. So the gist of this particular presentation is that when we're awake and we utilize energy to do our daily activities, we produce a lot of free radicals because of the ATP production. And one of the counterbalancing parts of that is that when we sleep and we don't utilize energy, that is the free time that our body repairs itself, and basically by the production and use of antioxidants. So if we don't sleep, that means our body can't repair itself from the free radicals that are expressed during the day. So that is the gist of this particular presentation, and I'm going to get much more into it as we go along. In today's objectives, we're going to cover some basic chemistry. I'm talking high school chemistry. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but you should know a little bit about redox reactions. You should know a little bit about oxidative stress. We're going to be talking about how oxidative stress is important to health. We're going to talk about health conditions that oxidative stress impacts. We're going to be talking a little bit about the circadian rhythm. We're going to be talking about the homeostatic processes involved with sleep, such as hormonal fluctuations. And then getting into more about exactly what this topic's about, we're going to be talking about a topic called NRF2 in sleep disturbances. New research has been produced on this topic. I'm not going to mention much about it right now, but this is the crux of what we're talking about. I'm also going to be talking about sleep and neurological disorders, and then finally, the role of antioxidants in sleep disorders. So, we're going to cover a bunch of different topics on this. When I first started it, I realized that I could actually develop 2 or 3 presentations on this. So this will be the first one, and I hope you enjoy it. We're not going to go crazy into chemistry, but you should understand what a basic redox reaction is. Basically, redox is short for oxidation reduction. These are chemical reactions that take place inside and outside the body, and they happen all the time, and they always happen simultaneously. So when you really think about it, when you hear the word oxidation, think about the loss of an electron. And then when you think about reduction, think about the gain of an electron. When there's a loss or gain of an electron, energy is produced. And that energy produces the basis of everything we're going to be talking about. But let's give some common examples. For example, the redox reaction above shows the mixture of iron and oxygen in water. So when iron and oxygen mix in the combination and there's water around, what you have left here is ferrous oxide, which is basically rust. So basically, you notice that the iron molecule on the left is oxidized, and when it's oxidized, it's actually a loss of an electron, so it transferred over to the iron on the right side, which is ferrous oxide. Regarding the oxygen molecule, basically it was reduced, a reduction, but actually it's a gain of electron. It's kind of funny when they talk about a reduction process in the cell is actually the gain of an electron. It's sort of counterintuitive. And then on the bottom, we're talking about redox reactions that take place within our body. For example, when glucose mixes with oxygen, it creates a chemical reaction where you get carbon dioxide and water, and most importantly, energy. This energy production is in the form of ATP. When ATP is produced, there's free radicals produced at the same exact time, unpaired electrons. So I just wanted you to get a simple understanding that redox reactions occur all the time. They happen simultaneously. Some examples of that could be the corrosion of metals. So for example, iron. They could be about combustion. Think about fire. You can think about plants with photosynthesis. You can think about our digestive process or metabolism, and that's the production of ATP from glucose. All of these things produce energy, but at the same exact time, they produce free radicals. So I just wanted you to get a little basic understanding what that means. Now that we know what a redox reaction is, let's talk about what is a free radical. We know that during a redox reaction, there is an electron either gained or lost, but this results in the outer shell of the molecule or the element being unstable. And that is the basic cause of a free radical. There are many metabolic processes that go along in the body that result in free radicals. The number one is AT production by the mitochondria. That is called cellular respiration. When a carbohydrate mixes with oxygen, it produces ATP, and as a result of that ATP, which is the energy we need to live, you get a free radical formed. Another example of free radicals is phagocytosis. Basically, that's when a white cell engulfs another foreign object or another bad cell in your body, and it kills the organism or the cell by the release of free radicals such as superoxide or hydrogen peroxide or hydroxyl radical. So these free radicals are produced to actually help our body. Another example of metabolic processes that result in the catalyzing of free radicals is the prostaglandin synthesis. Basically, during that process, oxygenation is catalyzed by the enzyme cyclooxygenase. All of these processes create free radicals in the body. And because of the free radicals, we make sure that we have enough antioxidants to balance them. There are other external sources of free radicals, such as X-rays, ozone, cigarette smoke, air pollution, industrial chemicals. These all come from our environment. Luckily, our body do produce enough antioxidants to fight them. And then from what we eat also produces free radicals. Free radicals are produced from refined sugar, carbohydrates, processed meats, and alcohol. All of these things. So it's what we eat, where we live, the environment we're in, how our body responds. So every day our body produces free radicals. And every day we have antioxidants to balance them. When that balance becomes unstable, that is called oxidative stress. So in other words, we're going to be coming up with these free radicals all day long because of every process in the body and also external to our body and also what we eat, what we breathe, everything we do. But we do produce antioxidants that counter it. When the free radicals exceed what we produce as antioxidants, that is called oxidative stress. And oxidative stress can result in a bunch of different things going wrong with our body. Most likely implicated is the DNA molecule. So I wanted to get into a little bit talking about the role of DNA and free radicals. Free radicals are implicated for DNA damage. Basically, the DNA molecule can be greatly impacted by free radicals in the body. It causes chemical modifications to its bases and sugar backbone, which change the helix. And you need DNA to produce proteins. It's the building block of the body. Basically, the DNA molecules, it has our genetic instructions to guide the development and function of various functions in the body. It actually produces proteins that are necessary for life. When the DNA molecule is damaged, these proteins are stopped or altered. And there are many different medical conditions and other conditions that are impacted by DNA damage. For example, old age. Old age is a result of the DNA molecule not creating the exact same copy that it did 20 years ago. So as each year goes on, our DNA becomes more fragile, and a lot of that has been implicated to oxidative stress. Also, DNA alteration can cause cancer. It could cause other illnesses. So it's really important to manage oxidative stress because of its implications with the DNA molecule. To sum it up, what is a free radical? A free radical is an unstable molecule within the body, and it's normally created by a byproduct of cellular metabolism and ATP production, as well as other things. When you have unpaired electrons, they are highly reactive within the body, and they could cause damage to DNA. They could also cause damage to proteins and lipids within the body. Any kind of damage to these three particles, the DNA, the proteins, or the lipids, results in cellular modification and disease processes. When you steal electrons from another molecule, and this is the cornerstone of a free radical, and you do not produce enough antioxidants to counter it, that is considered oxidative stress. When our body's in high levels of oxidative stress, you can almost count on damage being done to your DNA, your proteins, your lipids, and other body functions. So that's why the basis of this lecture is talking about sleep, but I wanted to implicate how free radicals and oxidative stress impacts that, and we're going to get a lot more into that in future slides. This is where one picture speaks 1,000 words. And so I wanted to sort of summarize where free radicals form and how they implicate the body. So to do that, I got this little thing right here. As you can see, you have DNA damage right here in the center, right? And how does that come from? It comes from UV lights that implicate the change of DNA. It comes from air pollution. It comes from ionizing radiation. It comes from smoking. And then also our bodies produce damage and free radicals. Basically, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's where ATP is produced. Also, when you have inflammation and illness, phagocytosis, that again produces free radicals. So you could see that the formation of free radicals is every day, everything we do. How do we balance that? We need antioxidants. Our bodies produce antioxidants naturally, but we also need antioxidants from external sources. And I'll get a little bit more into that as we go along. Before we get much further, I just want to let you know that not all free radicals are bad. Many of them have beneficial aspects to our body, like our bodies produce free radicals for a very good reason, and that is to survive. But if the balance of free radicals exceeds the balance of antioxidants, we get what is known as oxidative stress, which is the focus of this lecture. So to give you some of the beneficial aspects of free radicals, you got to think about the immune system. The immune system uses free radicals to kill pathogens like bacteria and viruses by damaging their membrane during the immune response. Also, free radicals support what is known as cell signaling. And you may wonder, what is cell signaling? That is where certain free radical molecules help communicate with other cells, regulating various body functions. Some of those functions could be like blood vessel dilation. I'm sure you all know that nitric oxide is a vasodilator, and it's actually a free radical. So when you think about signaling of cells and you think about nitric oxide, these are all cellular responses that are they are originated from free radicals. So free radicals have a lot of beneficial aspects, but as I mentioned earlier, if the free radicals exceed the antioxidants, that is what causes oxidative stress, and that was what causes a host of bad things to happen. So I just want to mention a little bit about free radicals right here, and that they're not all bad. Now let's turn our attention to some free radicals that are produced in the body. And there's a whole list of them. I'm not going to go across all of them because this lecture is not all about free radicals. I just want you to have a little basic understanding of what free radicals are. So let's talk about the superoxide ion. The superoxide ion, which is a free radical, is produced in the mitochondria as a result of ATP production. So when you get glucose and you add oxygen to it, it produces water and energy. But a byproduct of that is the superoxide ion. Another type of ion that's out there is the nitric oxide ion, the NO. And that is also produced by the mitochondria during ATP production. And that has a particular damaging effect on tissues, especially the lungs. So we could all relate to nitric oxide therapy, and we could all talk about vasodilation, but too much of it can really cause some harm. When you think about nitric oxide, that's primarily coming from the combustion processes such as car exhaustion and air pollution. So that's where nitric oxide comes. When you think about hydrogen peroxide in itself is really not a free radical, but it's a very, very unstable molecule. And it quickly breaks down with superoxide radicals and becomes catalyzed by certain enzymes, and as a result becomes a free radical. That again can wreak some havoc in the body. It could destroy your DNA. It actually has a big effect on the respiratory system, the kidneys, and blood vessels. So, these are some of the most common free radicals, and luckily that our bodies produce antioxidants, and we also get antioxidants from external sources, which we're going to get into. So I just wanted you to know a little bit about free radicals, and if you want to look these up yourself, you're more than likely to do it. But really think about the superoxide, nitric oxide, and hydroxyl ion. These are the real bad guys in the body. Now let's turn our attention to what is an antioxidant. An antioxidant is a substance, a chemical, that is produced either in the body or can be taken from foods we eat, or it can also be delivered through a dietary supplement. The role of an antioxidant is that it neutralizes free radicals. What I mean by that is that our bodies have free radicals in it all the time. If we have antioxidants, the antioxidants are chemicals that mix with the free radical and neutralizes it to a point that it's harmless to the body. So if you have enough antioxidants in your body, it can scavenge or remove the harmful effects of all the free radicals that are produced in the body. And then you don't have oxidative stress. If you have an imbalance between your antioxidants and your free radicals, that is called oxidative stress, which is the root cause of many, many chronic diseases, including things that originate from sleep. Some examples of antioxidants, which we're going to get into, is coenzyme 10, glutathione, vitamin E, selenium, vitamin C. All of these are antioxidants and do have beneficial impact on your body because they actually remove the free radicals in the body. And we're going to get a little bit more into that in the next slide. So what is the relationship between the free radicals and antioxidants? Obviously, our bodies produce free radicals all the time due to physiologic responses such as ATP production, also the pollution we get from outside, some of the food we eat, all of this creates free radicals. The good news is that we have antioxidants that neutralize them. And so all of these reactions that occur in the body are redox reactions, like we mentioned earlier. And when redox reactions occur, you end up having free radicals produced, but then they are neutralized with antioxidants. Antioxidants come from, there's some are produced in the body, and then also some are ingested by the foods we eat. So let's talk about some of the major antioxidants produced in the body. Glutathione. Glutathione is a key antioxidant that protects cells from damage caused by toxins and free radicals. It's actually one of the best antioxidants in the body. The glutathione is considered the godfather of antioxidants. It is like produced in our body, and thank God it is, because it keeps us not being in an oxidative stress. Another thing is alpha lipoic acid. This is, again, is a nice, powerful antioxidant. It is naturally produced by body cells. We all have heard of coenzyme 10. Coenzyme 10 decreases production in the body as we get older. So a lot of people take supplements when you get a little bit over 50 years of age, or you have any kind of heart disease. Coenzyme 10 is a good choice because basically it helps maintain the health of the mitochondria, and it also can improve high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. So there's a lot of benefits. And finally, we get another enzyme or antioxidant that's produced in the body. It's called catalase. And catalase is an antioxidant that breaks down hydrogen peroxide, which is a free radical. And we all know that hydrogen peroxide can be harmful to the body. It can create cellular damage. Also, catalase can work with certain drugs, such as relieving diabetes, also could relieve hypertension, Alzheimer's disease. There's a lot of research with catalase. The impact on catalase on physiologic responses in the body is really big. So these are some of the major antioxidants produced in the body. We need them all. These are the granddaddies or the grandmommies, whatever you want to call it. And glutathione is the king or queen antioxidant. So let's talk about one of the antioxidants called superoxide dismutase, or SOD. Basically, this antioxidant is produced in the cytoplasm of the cell. The main purpose of this antioxidant is to convert the superoxide anion to hydrogen peroxide and water, which is further broken down by other enzymes in the body. Like I said, it's produced in the cytoplasm of the cell. It can be found in a lot of the foods we eat, such as cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. And they have been doing some studies with this particular antioxidant showing that mutations of it have been linked to neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, ALS, Huntington disease, and Parkinson's disease. And what's really interesting is current research on this antioxidant has been focusing on anti-tumor and anti-aging studies. They believe that the oxidative stress caused by free radicals is part of the aging process, and it's also linked to the damaging of the DNA, where our DNA tells our bodies to produce new cells, and the copy of those cells degrades over time due to oxidative stress. So we're getting a little bit off on a tangent here, but I just thought I'd throw out that information to you. So let's turn our attention to antioxidants that are not created in the body that we need to get from the foods we eat and sometimes supplements. So, I'm sure you recognize a lot of these names, and everyone's telling you to eat them to be healthy. And the fact is, it's true. What they're telling you to have these in your diet is very true. And sometimes it can be kind of difficult to get all these things in your diet. For example, selenium comes from Brazil nuts and tuna, great antioxidant. Polyphenols, I'm sure you all heard of that. That comes from your veggies, from your fruits, from your nuts, again, everything you eat. Now, we all heard of flavonoids. Basically, these are very powerful antioxidants that can reduce free radicals in the body. And again, they come from the foods we eat. One of the flavonoids that I pay attention to is called anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are flavonoids that come in dark blue or purple fruits. So what comes to mind of that? Blueberries. And blueberries have a very powerful antioxidant effect, but more importantly, it's excellent for heart health. And, I'm over 50, well over 50, so I eat blueberries every day. I try to get as many of these antioxidants from a food group as I can, but I'm not picture perfect. You got vitamin C that comes from citrus fruits such as oranges and grapefruits, strawberries, cantaloupes, red and green peppers, really good, broccoli, all vitamin C. Vitamin E comes from nuts such as almonds, peanuts, hazelnuts, sunflowers, and also it's in spinach and broccoli. Beta carotene comes from carrots, anything orange, carrots, cantaloupe, apricots, mangoes, sweet potatoes, all of them have it. Now, something I just recently learned is the last one is called, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, astaxanthin. And basically, I never really heard of that antioxidant until I did this research. And I've done this kind of PowerPoint before, so this is something new to me. And basically, it comes from red pigmented algae and yeast. Really strange. But the benefits of this is phenomenal. I've been reading so many things about it, and they're doing a lot of research on this with regard to anti-aging and also skin integrity. They say it sometimes could reduce wrinkles. So I don't know much about this, but I'm definitely going to research this on my own. But these are antioxidants that our bodies cannot produce naturally. So we really need to find them either in the foods we eat or in a supplement. And to the most part, the life I live, I try to get them from the food. I'm not picture perfect, and I do take coenzyme 10 as a supplement, and I might be looking at that astaxanthin, which I think is really good, and continue. We all want to be healthy, and we all want to live long, and that's the whole goal of everything. But the focus of this lecture, again, is sleep, so I don't want to get off on a tangent. So now we're getting into meat and potatoes of this whole lecture. And the concept is, what is oxidative stress? We covered what is a redox reaction. We also covered what is a free radical. Another name for a free radical is oxygen reactive species, or actually ROS. That's the same thing as a free radical. And then we also talked about antioxidants. And we also talked about the fact that, free radicals are not all bad. They are very important for many useful physiologic purposes, such as cell growth, cell differentiation, immune response, about apoptosis, which is basically programmed cell death. So all of this is really important because free radicals play an important role. But when you talk about oxidative stress, and that's the crux of this whole lecture, oxidative stress is a phenomenon where you have a production of free radicals that is greater than the antioxidants that we have in our body, and you have an imbalance. When you have an imbalance of that, it impacts a lot of different things, especially the impairment of DNA repair systems and mitochondrial dysfunction. Many proteins can't be produced, and there's a lot of real problems going along in the body because of this. So we're going to get more into it. So just understand that oxidative stress is an imbalance between your free radicals, which are good for your body, but too much are bad, and the antioxidants that you have in your body to counter that. And we're going to get more into it as we move along. So let's talk about the detrimental effects of oxidative stress on human health. And I wanted you to understand that there's a lot of research out there showing that oxidative stress is the root cause of numerous problems in the body. For example, cancer, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and then sleep, besides the other ones. So let me get a little bit more detail. They believe that oxidative stress damages the DNA and causes DNA mutations, and as a result of that, you have cellular proliferation in cancer. They also are doing some studies how antioxidant therapy can help with cancer patients because of the destructive nature of oxidative stress. Let's talk about cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease can be broken down into either vascular effects or cardiac effects. They've done studies where they show that oxidative stress damages endothelial tissue. It also shows that it does some vascular inflammation. And regarding the cardiac effects, they have some myocardial damage where the inflammation of the heart muscle is contributed to oxidative stress. And if you really think about it, coenzyme 10 is one of the antioxidants they use for cardiovascular disease. Now, there are other disease processes in the body. I could talk about neurological disease. And the neurological disease, again, is contributed to the damage to the DNA as a result of oxidative stress and the proteins it produces. And some of the disease processes regarding neurological disease, I mentioned this earlier, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, multiple sclerosis, ALS, all have been contributed to oxidative stress. Now that we sort of understand how oxidative stress can impact multiple systems in the body, let's keep the focus what we're doing here to sleep. So let's talk about sleep and oxidative stress. We all know that sleep is fundamental to health. You get a good night's sleep, you feel great. Your memory is good, your body's good, and hopefully, life is good. But sleep deprivation or sleep deficiency can wreak havoc on many different parts of your body. There's been many studies showing that chronic sleep deficiency can lead to heart disease, kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, obesity, depression, and there's a whole list of things that go on. And sleep deficiency can really do more damage to teens and children during their years of growth. So the idea of a good night's sleep is vitally important. They have shown that sleep deprivation results in increased levels of oxidative stress. And as I mentioned earlier, how oxidative stress can impact your immunity, it can impact your cardiovascular system, it can impact your endocrine system, and it actually can impact your mind, your brain. I know personally from not sleeping very well, I'm not quite as sharp as I normally am when I have a good night's sleep. So you really need to get a good handle on sleep, and I'm just trying to introduce the concept that sleep deprivation and oxidative stress go hand in hand. There are certain aspects of sleep that is really important to maintain good health. And I'm going to mention some of them, and I'm going to get into more detail about one particular one, which is actually brain plasticity. But let's talk about the other ones. We need an average of 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. That is a typical value that if you have good quality sleep for 7 to 8 hours, you're in good shape. And during this time, there are certain things happening in the brain. For example, there's a process when we are sleeping that is called waste removal. It doesn't occur when we're awake. It only occurs when we're sleeping. And basically, waste removal is managed by the lymphatic system, which is basically a network of tubes that go in and out of the brain. And what they do is they flush the brain of toxins during that time. And like I said, it only occurs when we are sleeping. It does not occur when we're awake. Accumulation of toxins in the brain actually gets into cerebral spinal fluid, which causes a lot of problems within the cells. So basically, impaired lymphatic function has been linked to various neurological disorders and oxidative stress, such as Alzheimer's disease, old age, and neurological disorders. Then another part about sleep that's really important is memory consolidation. We all need to consolidate memories that we have during the day and put them in the right place. It's really important. Finally, we get into dreaming. Dreaming is really good because it consolidates your emotions, consolidates your memories, it improves problem-solving abilities, and it enhances creativity. And again, these are really important things. Finally, we get into brain plasticity. Brain plasticity, we're going to go into that a little bit more in the next slide, is the brain's ability to adapt to change in its structure and function in response to experiences, and it allows the brain to actually rewire itself. Oxidative stress actually works negatively on brain plasticity. That is where a lot of the research is going, that when you don't sleep well, it actually rewires your brain and it impacts your brain plasticity, which I'm going to get into much more detail during the second slide. There are many theories going along with why, when we have sleep deprivation, do we have changes in brain structure. One of those theories is called the brain plasticity theory of sleep. And basically, an author wrote a book called The Principles of Psychology. His name was William James. And he wrote this book over 100 years ago. And he's the first one to mention the concept of brain plasticity theory of sleep. And the key points of this theory is that the brain plasticity refers to the brain's ability to change and adapt its structure and function to meet its needs. And that's kind of really interesting. They also have shown that sleep deprivation has been known to impair this function. So brain plasticity doesn't occur when you have sleep deprivation. And they believe that the root cause of this is oxidative stress. This is another interesting theory that was postulated in 1994 by Dr. Eric Ramond. He was a pathologist from Mississippi. He came up with a theory called the free radical flux theory of sleep. And basically what he said was that during the day, our brain, our cerebral part of our brain, fills up with free radicals because we're awake and we're doing stuff and we're just motivated, thinking, moving, doing everything like that. So he's postulated that the removal of these free radicals is accomplished during sleep. So sleep actually decreases all the activity of the brain and it gives time to make antioxidant work more efficiently. So what he was basically saying was sleep functions as an antioxidant for the brain. Kind of interesting. Another very important theory is called the restorative theory of sleep. And basically this theory says that you need sleep because it helps restore and repair your body and mind at the cellular level. And what we're talking about cellular levels, they've done some studies that as people are sleeping, there's an increase in cellular division, there's an increase in protein synthesis, and there's an increase in growth hormone levels. People who are deprived of sleep or sleep deprivation has been shown to have decreased levels. Now, this goes hand in hand with oxidative stress because as you don't sleep well, you have increased levels of oxidative stress. Non-REM and REM sleep seems to be the most important part of restoring mental functions during this time. So the concept is if you keep your oxidative stress in order and you have good sleep, you are going to be in a healthy state of mind. So let's get a little bit more into sleep regulation. And I'm sure you all have heard of the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is basically the body's internal clock that regulates sleep by responding to light and darkness. What it does is it produces melatonin. So basically, during the circadian rhythm, when it gets dark out, melatonin, which is a hormone that the body produces to regulate sleep, starts increasing. And typically the melatonin levels are maxed around from 2 in the morning to 4 in the morning. And then as the morning comes about and the sun starts coming out and you get a little bit of light, the melatonin production actually decreases. During the neuroendocrine system, basically at this time, this is a hormone that is released by the body that regulates the circadian rhythm and is also mostly controlled by a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. And basically, it's another system that dictates the wake-sleep cycle. And what happens is, part of that system is melatonin is produced, and at the same time, when you wake up in the morning, cortisol is produced. So what happens between the influx of melatonin at night when it gets dark out versus when daylight comes up and then all of a sudden you get cortisol, that's how you wake up. But with sleep disturbances, it actually impacts the signaling pathways. Remember we were talking about signaling pathways? Who creates signaling pathways in the body? It's the free radicals, right? And the free radicals, this is a good thing. But because of sleep disturbances, you get an overabundance of those free radicals, which makes the signaling a little bit bad. And as a result of that, you have some structural and synaptic plasticity problems. Also, as evidenced by the fact that there's some kind of inflammatory process during this time. So when you have lack of sleep, they've done blood work on people who were, basically not sleeping very well, and they see an elevated pro-inflammatory cytokines such as interleukin-1, tumor necrosis factor, interleukin-6, and interleukin-17. Basically, all of these are inflammatory markers which can create problems with you regarding your cardiovascular system. And then finally, I'm sure you heard of C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein is another inflammatory marker that with sleep deprivation, that is increased. So with all that being said, we have an idea what sleep regulation comes from. It comes from the circadian rhythm. It comes from the neuroendocrine system. It also is regulated by the synaptic features of the brain. But with oxidative stress and imbalances between the free radicals and antioxidants, what we have is the inflammatory process. And the inflammatory process is measured by all those pro-inflammatory cytokines that are released in the body. So, we really got to get a good handle on sleep deprivation, and the focus of this lecture is to tell you how oxidative stress is really impacting all of these features. Most studies have shown that we need at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. So I just wanted to go over some of these concepts with you. So let's talk about some of the evidence out there regarding oxidative stress and sleep deprivation. Let's recap a couple of things. Number one, we know that sleep is regulated by both the circadian rhythm and neuroendocrine processes. We know that the circadian rhythm or the circadian clock controls the timing of sleep, the timing of waking. It also talks about different stages of sleep, such as REM sleep and non-REM sleep. So everything is controlled by the circadian rhythm. And how it's controlled, how is this all happening, is through redox signaling. What redox signaling is when the free radicals are used in a useful way that they could communicate with other cells, and it's a trigger how to promote a certain physiologic response. So what they're finding is free radicals, the useful part of that is that it's signaling different parts of the circadian rhythm, and this is what influences our sleep cycle. The evidence is showing that all of these reactions, these cellular redox reactions, are taking place in an area called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and this is a small region in the hypothalamus, and this is actually what controls the circadian rhythm. What happens is, because people don't sleep and you have sleep deprivation, there's an accumulation of reactive oxygen species or free radicals that is leading to circadian rhythm disturbances. This is the core reason why they believe that oxidative stress impacts your circadian rhythm through the fact that it changes your cellular redox reactions that is normal in healthy people. They also did some studies where they looked at night workers who exhibited elevated systemic markers of oxidative stress. So people who worked night had increased plasma protein oxidation, and they also had reduced antioxidant defenses. So this is the core reason why oxidative stress impacts sleep, especially for those who don't sleep well, and it could cause a lot of harm to the body. I have a little bit more information to show you on this. There is some new evidence out there that the use of antioxidants could improve oxidative stress with people who have sleep deprivation. Two studies were done, one in 2015 and 2023, and they both highlight that antioxidant has a way of improving brain and peripheral tissues in regard to oxidative stress, and especially those who suffer from sleep deprivation. So the key point here is that oxidative stress can be treated with antioxidants. Some of the most cutting-edge research out there is focusing on this transcription factor called NRF2. And you may want to know, what is a transcription factor? A transcription factor is basically a protein that regulates the transcription or the makeup of genes. And what it does, it takes a DNA molecule and spins off an RNA molecule that could actually make new proteins. So they have found, they're focusing with this, and they found that this regulates cellular defenses against toxic and oxidative stress. They also found that this assists in the creation of proteins for antioxidant enzymes. So this is a lot of research going directly into this factor. And they have found out also that it regulates numerous antioxidant genes by metabolizing proteins and enzymes. So they found that this is the best avenue to do future research regarding oxidative stress and sleep deprivation. Anything you do to improve oxidative stress is important, such as vitamin C, vitamin E, glutathione, coenzyme 10, they're all good. So these are things you could do in the meantime, but they're doing a lot of research on this particular transcription factor. And if they do some good research with this, they might develop some new drugs that can really treat oxidative stress. This is a great little picture of exactly the whole process of sleep, reactive oxygen species, and oxidative stress in regard to the NRF2 signaling. So, you know, during the day, we accumulate a lot of reactive oxygen species, and this is the area over to the right, right? And then as we fall asleep, right, we fall asleep and we sleep, this is when we clear that oxidative stress through our body. And basically, we do this through the NRF2 signaling. So this is a little picture. So, when we're awake, we accumulate a lot of reactive oxygen species because we're busy. We're doing things, we're talking, we're running around. There's a lot of activity going on. When we go to sleep, and through the process of NRF2 signaling, we actually clear reactive oxygen species and we get better. So I wanted to give you an idea of some of the research that is being conducted, namely through the transcription factor NRF2. This particular page is from Cellular and Molecular Neurobiology. It was from 2024, so you could see how current it is. And they have found out that all of these antioxidant genes and enzymatic activity all originates from the NRF2. And I'm not going to read this to you, but you could see that there's a ton of the dependent genes and know about what kind of genes you have versus the enzymatic function. And this is where a lot of research is being done currently on this topic. So with everything being said, since the focus is mostly on NRF2 deficiency, they are looking at ways to remedy this. And there is hope, and they're doing some new research on that. And they have found that there are various molecules that can supplement this deficiency. And I'm going to show you some of those molecules and supplements in the next slide. So there is some good news and there's some potential good research out there. So since they identified the transcription factor that's causing sleep deprivation as well as the oxidative stress it causes, they were looking at to study NRF2 deficiencies and what can you take to counter that. And they've done some research with humans and animals, and here's what they found. And this is a short list, and I have a next page. I'm going to show you a bunch of other stuff. One of the choices to use is ellagic acid. Ellagic acid comes from pomegranates, it comes from strawberries, it comes from raspberries, it comes from walnuts, and basically this is a polyphenolic compound found in plants. They used this on mice, and they found that mice that had sleep deprivation had a decrease in anxiety and actually improved memory. It also reduced the inflammatory response and oxidative stress caused by sleep deprivation. So it had a positive effect, and it actually works through the NRF2 pathway. The other one is carrillogen. Carrillogen is again from the pomegranate plant, but not the fruit. It's from the leaves, and it's actually part of Chinese herbal medicine. And they have, from that, they had a derivative called alagatanin, which is a derivative of ellagic acid. And they have found that this increases sleep deprivation-induced oxidative stress. Another good thing. Finally, we got isoflavones. When you think of an isoflavone, think about estrogen-like compounds normally found in soybeans and legumes. And basically, this is a phytoestrogen. And what they found was this improved the cognitive performance of sleep-deprived animals, and it also increased SOD activity, which is a super-duper antioxidant. And finally, we have melatonin. Melatonin comes from various places. It comes from St. John wort, it comes from feverfew, which is an herbal medicine. It comes from nuts, it comes from bananas, it comes from grapes, coffees, and it can also be synthetically produced. Basically, this hormone is responsible for regulating the sleep-wake cycle. I'm sure you all have heard of melatonin, and it actually triggers the production of important antioxidant enzymes such as SOD and GPX. So this is a short list of some of the remedies that they have out there. They're doing research. Everything seems to be kind of positive with this research. This is a much more detailed list than I just showed you on the previous page. And you have various studies being done on this. I mentioned a few of them, but there's a few here that I did not mention. And you might want to just do a little bit of research yourself on this. I could actually develop a whole new lecture just on this one page, and maybe I will. But at this point, I just wanted to give you an overview of some of the research out there, and it's very promising in some of the studies that are supporting this research. In summary, sleep deprivation and oxidative stress is a serious issue causing a whole host of chronic conditions in the body. Good news is that scientists are studying the neurobiology of the brain and are establishing very good ways of handling this disorder. The good news is they identified a very valid transcription factor called NRF2, which seems to be a leading reason why a ton of research is being done in this area. Right now, they're working on ways to deal with the NRF2 deficiency through different polyphenols and different chemicals and different supplements, which is really good. So it seems like the common answer here is antioxidants. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I could have done a lot more with this regarding future presentations, which I think I will. I just didn't want to elaborate and make this a 2-hour presentation. I want to thank you very much for joining my presentation. I have some references here. Like I said, this is a lot of new current research. So you can see the references are really kind of current, and they're doing a ton of research on this topic. I think I'll develop a second topic to further your understanding of how sleep deprivation and oxidative stress works hand in hand. And I want to thank you guys for all joining me.